All right. Welcome back to the world famous Tipitinas. Thank you so much to Tipitinas for letting us use the space. Thank you to Nugs.net for letting us use your equipment. And I hope you are enjoying this on Tipitinas.tv. Please like and subscribe and share and do all the things that you do with the internet. It's free, so help us out. We're trying to get the word out. Before I introduce our guest, we actually have a new segment I want to put on the All Right broadcast because it's our first piece of fan mail. Can you believe that? We actually got fan mail for the first time. And if you do email us, I will go ahead and read it on the air. And I guess if this guy were to have given us his address, I would probably start mailing out stickers if people start sending us stuff. So here it goes. Dear Tank, I love the All Right broadcast. You've been having great guests, and I hope you guys keep more coming in. I've been learning a lot about local musicians I already love, and for the few people I hadn't heard of before, I consider myself a fan of theirs after watching their interviews. So that's really nice.
Yeah.
I do have one complaint. Okay, this isn't so nice. You referenced the other guys working on the program, like the great Pete Jones and Tanner. Why can't we hear or see them? Maybe one day you guys can up the production value a bit and increase their visibility. Even if you don't have them on camera, maybe you can mic them up. If not, I'll keep watching the show anyway. Keep up the good work. Signed, Jay. Well, Jay, thank you so much for your comment. It just so happens that for the very first time, here we are, December 18th, 2020, a week before Christmas, your dream came true. We're adding a new element to the program. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Pete Jones has a microphone.
Let's get ready to rumble! And here I am, everybody.
Okay, we're instantly regretting adding a third camera or a third microphone. Yeah, sorry, Jay. Yeah, sorry, Jay. But the great Pete Jones has a microphone. I know you can't see him yet because we don't make any money doing this, so we're not spending any money on this program yet. When we start making money, we'll buy more cameras, and maybe we'll even get Tan the Man upstairs in the closet. We might give him a microphone one day too. But your dream came true. So here we go. Pete Jones, say hello.
Hello.
See, there we go. The great Pete Jones. Now, on with the actual program. I have a nice little intro I wrote. Our guest tonight is one of the sweetest men in the music industry. If you're old enough, you probably know him from his time playing with James Booker, Professor Longhair, and Road Apple. But lately, you've seen him perform with the New Orleans Suspects, Billy Ayuso and the Restless Natives, Mo Fess, and let's not forget, 40-plus years in the Radiators. Please welcome Reggie Scanlan.
Thanks. How you doing, Tank?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for being here, man. I really
glad
appreciate
to be
it.
here. I feel like I'm back home.
Yeah, well, this is your home. You've been playing here for over 40 years, since before the Radiators, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember your first time playing at Tipitinas?
You know, in those days, they didn't really have, like, a schedule. Like, people just showed up and played.
Yeah.
So, and you'd see bands kind of forming on stage. Mm-hmm. So my first time was probably in those kind of jam sessions, like... And it, you know, it included in those days, you know, John Mooney, who else? John Magny, you know, the guys in the Rads, you know, just everybody was just on stage doing stuff, you know.
Well, I mentioned Road Apple. Spencer Bourne did Mondays. You probably sat in with Spencer, yeah.
Well, Spencer was part of Road Apple.
Yeah.
He and Dave and I, and Tommy, I think, was in that for a minute too.
Okay.
So yeah, we all kind of grew up on this stage. Mm-hmm. We just happened to be at that age, and this was happening at that time, and it was what it was. You know, this was the jump point.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember? Did you ever play here before it was Tipitinas, when it was the 501 Club? Did they ever have live music?
I'm not sure if I played here the first time and it was still called the 501.
Okay.
It might have still been that when Hank was running it and stuff.
All right.
But those days were it's like one long jam session, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, and then they'd have Fess in here, you know, to play, and then book, and then it started getting a little bit more organized, and then you had schedules, and you had, you know, all those bands that formed in the jam sessions, and they all had their nights to play here too. So it was really a pretty remarkable time to be involved in this, you know.
Well, that's pretty special. You know, I mentioned a couple of the guys you had played with, like James Booker and Professor Longhair, obviously, and Fess is dressed for the new year. I don't know if you noticed that when you came in. He's wearing the tuxedo and the top hat.
His birthday's tomorrow.
Tomorrow, as a matter of fact. This will air well after his birthday, but absolutely, December 19th, 102 years.
Yep.
102.
Miss that guy every day.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the funny thing. You're, and this isn't a stab at your age or anything like that, but you're kind of one of those guys that bridges the gap between super old school guys that were playing in the 40s, essentially, and here you are still playing today.
You're right. I mean, where I fall in that age group is right at that point where I saw the last of that older school thing, and was part of the beginning of the next thing because that all happened right here. The thing that I always wish, though, is like everybody's like, you wish you had been around 10 years before to see the guys that you wish you hadn't seen, you know? So there's a lot of guys I wish I had been able to see when I was coming up, but there was a lot of guys that were still around that I got to learn a lot from, you know, like Booker and Fess and Earl King and all those guys. And, you know, even earlier, when I couldn't get in any place other than Preservation Hall, you know, I'd go down and hang out there sometimes on a weekend night and pester the bass player, you know. It's like, he didn't know who I was. I was just some dumb kid, you know. Hey, man, I'm trying to learn how to play bass. Oh, it's just his artist. He's like, okay, just keep on practicing. And she's like, man, come on, kid. I only got 15 minutes on my break, you know. So, but, you know, you got such a sense of what it was all about, you know, and also, I think in New Orleans there is a sense of mentorship. That, you know, like, I mean, Fess didn't really like sit down and teach me something like learn this and learn that, but being around those guys and learning how they did things and seeing how they put their stuff
osmosis,
together.
Right?
That's really how you learned a lot of that stuff. It was just being around them, seeing how they ran their bands and how they worked their music and did that kind of stuff, and that's kind of how you learn to carry it on. You know, that's really the only way it does get carried on, is if, you know, you learn it from the guy who's doing it before you.
Something I learned about you the other day that I did not know was obviously I knew that you had been in other bands before the Radiators. But that you had gone to California and had some decent success out there on the West Coast for a couple of years before you ended up joining up.
Right after, like, I worked with Booker for a while, and then basically we moved to California because my wife was going to go to, got accepted into Cal Arts in Los Angeles, and she also got accepted in a bunch of schools up on the Bay Area. So I was like, yeah, let's go. I don't have anything going on here. So we went out there.
Well, the gigs like you were playing with Booker before you ended up going to California, though.
And then I was playing with Kurt Casson Band and, you know, that kind of stuff, and, you know, the Playboy Club down in the French Quarter, you know. So
it wasn't enough to keep you here, though, huh?
No, because I was like 21, 22 years old, man. I was ready to hit the road and go do something. So, and California was like, you know, in 1974, that was 75. That was, you know, that was like going to the promised land. So,
yeah, it was still like kind of the Wild West, but there had been kind of
and on the way out there, I got hooked up with this is woman songwriter Rachel Farrow, who was with RCA at the time. I got hooked up playing with her, and then, you know, we ended up going to Los Angeles, and, you know, I played with her for a while. But both of us my wife and I both hated Los Angeles, and she didn't really like this. Cal Arts didn't really offer what she was looking for.
Okay.
So we transferred up to the Bay Area, and I just kind of fell into the blues scene there, and ended up playing with a whole bunch of people, basically because that was right at the time when that whole Larry Graham thing was starting to happen with the bass. So everybody out there was playing bass like that, and these old guys, they were like, can you just kind of play a ballad like just normal? And I was like, yeah, no problem. So I got a lot of work with a lot of guys just because I wasn't doing that kind of stuff. And I was old school, you know, and I still am. So I got a lot of work. I got to work with Charles Brown and Sonny Rhodes and all these kind of guys. And it was, the scene out there though was really, I mean, it was like ghetto clubs. I mean, where they had gunfights going on all the time,
No
people
kidding.
stabbing each other, and
man.
on the breaks they'd have a guy out there with his a B&E guy selling stuff out of his trunk of his car that he just ripped off from some place. I mean, it was
Stole it out of your car. Now we're selling it out of his car.
it was a crazy scene. I mean, it was really nuts, but it was a great learning experience, especially for me, because I went out there, growing up in high school, I was, we all had blues bands, so I thought I knew how to play blues, but when I got out there playing with those guys, man, the first night I realized I ran out of stuff before the first set was over. I was like, I better go home and shed.
Well, I didn't even know that there was that strong of a blues scene in San Francisco around then.
Next to Chicago was the biggest one.
Really?
Because all of those guys moved out there. I mean, I was playing with guys that had played in Ray Charles's band and B.B. King's band, and all. They just all settled out there.
Yeah.
And also it was a big area for a lot of guys like Clifton and Chenier to go play out there, because there was a lot of Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, Arkansas people that moved out there during the Second World War to work in the shipyards and stuff. So there was a lot of people from here that were there, and so they had a lot of music coming through there, blues stuff that And,
well, people think late '60s, early '70s people. When I say people, I mean stupid people like me that are too young to know better. You assume, you think just a lot of the hippie music is happening out there, late '60s, early '70s. Not so much blues, more like the Grateful Dead type of stuff.
That was all happening. I mean, look, that was all that stuff was still happening. It just you couldn't make any money at it. I mean, if you had like a rock band or something, and you wanted to go, say you got Plaid Tips, well, your response would be, okay, well, here's 200 tickets, go sell them, and that's going to be how you make your money.
Yeah.
And that's how you did it. The blues clubs were set up different, where, I mean, you didn't make a whole lot, but you got paid. The clubs would usually hire a rhythm section or a band for that weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then they'd hire somebody to come front the band, like Sonny Rhodes or somebody like that.
Yeah.
And you got $25, $30 for the gig, so you had to do at least two gigs a night to make anything. Yeah. And you had to be working nonstop,
every day,
almost every day. Yeah. But it was great training, and it was, it
well, you were probably young enough and dumb enough to think it was great also,
I loved it. I loved it. And the stories, look, I got great stories. I wouldn't want to go through it again, but the stories, well, I mean, it was an eye-opening education, let me tell you.
Well, is there any, you mentioned stories. I don't want you to tell all the stories. Is there a standout of something totally ridiculous that couldn't happen anywhere else?
Well, this probably happened in a bunch of clubs, but it was kind of one of the kind of things that would happen, not often, but enough. I was playing it was an after hours gig one night. It was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was in an area in North Richmond in the Bay Area, which even the police didn't go in this area without multiple police cars.
Yeah.
So, we're doing. I'm playing at this after hours gig, and I just bought a brand new fretless bass. I was just starting out the fretless bass, and so we're doing the gig, and man, we're playing, and I'm paying attention, trying to get every note right. And all of a sudden, I notice, man, everybody's running off the stage, and the drummer's laying down on the floor behind the stage, and all this. And I'm like, what's going on? And everybody's running out the back door, and they got a guy with a shotgun coming through the club.
Oh man,
man, and the drummer's like, throw the bass down and get down here. I was like, I just bought it. It's new. I'm putting it in the stand real nice. The guy started to shoot the shotgun off, and I'm like, geez, man. I said, what in the hell am I even doing here?
Oh man,
this is crazy. But it was, I mean, that kind of stuff happened all the time. There was one club I played at. There was a woman named Liz who ran the club, and man, she was a hard ass.
Yeah.
And I remember one night we're playing, and all of a sudden this fight broke out between this guy and his wife, and she had a pool cue and he had a broken bottle, and they were squaring off in front of the stage. And man, Liz just came through there, picked both of them up by the shirt collar, and like railroaded them right out the door. It was pretty hilarious. There was and then you get stories like the musicians were funny too. I mean, Sonny Rhodes was I played with him a lot, and he used to. He didn't have a car, so he had to take a bus from East Oakland all the way out to these clubs, which took about an hour and a half.
Oh man.
And he didn't have much to do on the bus except drink. So by the time he got to the gig, he was pretty tanked up, no pun intended.
Hey, man, here. Yeah.
So this one night he gets there, and it was just a trio. It was just me and a drummer backing him up. And he was really loaded, and he started doing this Percy Mayfield song, The Highway's Like a Woman. And it's just like a slow blues, and he's up there, and all of these women all screaming at the stage, and they're going nuts over him. He's playing and singing, and then he goes for the solo, and he's down, leaning into the crowd, and the women all are screaming, yelling. Now he's sitting on the front of the stage, and he's playing. He's in the middle of solo, and the next thing he hears,
oh man,
and the guy fell asleep in his solo. I was like, you got to be kidding me, man.
Oh, man.
So you had those kind of nights.
Oh, mercy.
But the reason I came back, I got a phone call from Fess. He goes, you want to join the band? I was like, I'm on the next flight. I told my wife, said, she was in the last semester. I said, you're going to have to move back. Take care of moving back because I got to go play with Fess.
That's great. Well, had you played and met him before, or was it kind of
That's
out of the
how
blue?
I got the gig. I had come home for a Christmas vacation while we were out in California. And while I was home, the guy who was managing him at the time, he was a guitar player. I can't think of his name offhand. But he called me up and he said, hey, man, he said, you want to come over and jam with Fess? It's like, hell yeah. Mm-hmm. So we went over on Esplanade where Quint was living at the time.
Okay.
And Quint wasn't home at the time. So we're in there and we're playing and making a little cassette, and it's just like, and I'm thinking, man, what a great vacation, man. This is terrific. And Quint came home and he goes, hey, Fess, what are you doing? Giving lessons or something? It's like, so anyway, and yeah, he was, even though he didn't know it. But, so I went back to California, and about 2 weeks later, I got a call from Fess. He goes, hey, man, he said, I really like the way you played on some of those tunes. He goes, do you want to be in the band? I was like, yes. I said, I'm on the next flight. I'll be there. The next weekend I was playing with him.
That's great. How long did you end up? Well, here's something else. I think you were doing Booker gigs and gigs with Fess at the same time.
Yeah, Booker really wasn't happy about that.
Okay.
Because Fess was my primary gig.
Oh, all
whatever
right.
Fess said, that's what I did.
Yeah.
So Booker was, sometimes Booker would call me for a gig, and I'd be like, I can't do it because I'm working with Fess. And he'd be like, I don't know why you want to play with him, but when do you want to play? And I was like, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just, that's my gig, So,
Yeah.
But that was like grad school. That guy did so much for me, I could never, ever repay, what he gave me through music. Mm-hmm. He was an amazing guy.
Well, and even today, you kind of helped carry that torch. You said you're playing a gig tomorrow, Fess's birthday. I assume it's going to be at Pat's house.
It's going to be at Pat's, yeah.
Yeah, and with MoFess.
Actually, that band, when we do it at Fess's house now, it's kind of expanded into like about a 12-piece band with
no kidding.
Craig Klein, Tom Fitzpatrick, Lionel's there. I mean, it's like John Fole.
Nice.
So it's turned into a thing, and then people come by, and Margie Perez will drop by and do a couple tunes, stuff like that. So it actually has taken on the character of a real kind of neighborhood thing that you imagine might have happened a long time ago in New Orleans in neighborhoods, you know. So it's pretty cool. I'm enjoying it. I love it,
Well, something we'll get more into it in a little bit, I guess, because I'm going to try and somewhat keep this chronological. It's going to be impossible, I guess. You've done too much to try and keep it chronological. Let's go back. When did you meet Dave? You guys met when you were in high school or right out of high school?
Right out of high school. We were both at UNO.
Okay.
And a guy that I knew was living in the house with the band he was in. It was his college band. And a guy I know at UNO was living with him, and he was their roadie, and he kept telling me, man, you got to come over and meet these guys, man. You really get along with them. So one day I was like, okay, yeah, let's go. So we went over there, and it was right over on Robert Street. They were living in a big house. Mm-hmm. And it was Dave and his brother John and a couple other people living there. And they had a little rehearsal space fixed up in the basement where they made recordings and stuff. It was all carpeted and everything. So Dave and I, we were hanging out upstairs for about 10 or 15 minutes. And he's like, "Hey, you want to go downstairs and play?" And we're like, "Yeah, let's go." So we went downstairs and we played about 2 or 3 songs off the Taj Mahal Natural Blues album. And it was like, when we finished, I mean, I don't know what he was thinking, but I was thinking, this is the guy I'm going to play with from now on. This is my guitar player from now on.
That's great.
And I was also thinking, he's never going to find a better bass player than me to play with him. For what he does, I'm the guy.
All right.
And we pretty much been that since then.
Yeah. How did you get into playing bass? When did you first pick it up? Did you ever play any other instruments before?
When I was in grammar school in 3rd grade, they started a band, so I got a saxophone. And after about 6 months of not making a whole lot of progress on it, and also I lived about 4 or 5 blocks from school, so I had to carry that thing back and forth, and I hated it. So I got a clarinet, which I loved because it just made, I didn't learn how to play it, but it made these incredibly crazy sounds that I would just sit around and make noise on it. But I did manage to stay in the band long enough to march in the Favorite Parade for Mardi Gras.
That's nice.
And it make a lot of noise.
Yeah, no one's going to notice you. There's other stuff happening.
That's what I figured. So after that, I didn't play anything. But after the Ed Sullivan thing with the Beatles, okay, everybody went out and got guitars. I never really kind of warmed up to the guitar. I didn't, and I never really understood it or anything. But some guys that, when I was at Redemptrist, just because of me saying so, thought I was a guitar player.
Oh.
So they said, "Well, look, we're starting a band, a Creedence Clearwater band, but we need a bass player. Would you be willing to play bass instead of guitar?" And I was like, "Well, okay, I'll do it, but you're gonna have to show me how to play the bass because I don't really play bass." And as it turned out, that music was really great to learn bass on because it's so simple.
Okay.
It's like you didn't have to be a musical gymnast to play it. So that's kind of what got me up and running. And then from that point, I just I was interested in it and learning, but it wasn't until I really discovered Duck Dunn and Jerry Jamont that it was really like, oh man, this is it. This is what I'm doing.
Nice.
And those 2 guys kind of powered me through the next 10 years of my bass playing.
Do you have a favorite CCR song?
I really like playing Down on the Corner with Dave because the way he does it just moves really nice. I like doing that, and I like doing most of their songs. They're fun.
I've heard the Rads play a CCR tune before, for sure.
Oh, we do a bunch of them.
Yeah.
They're just fun to play. I mean, they're funky, but the simplicity of them it just makes it so you could just roll into it, And plus, they lend themselves to different interpretations.
Yeah,
which is fun, But that's kind of how I started, and it just kind of picked up from there. And also I realized that for every 100 guitar players, there was probably 1 bass player. So
everyone wants to play a guitar, right?
Yeah, and after that, I was like, good, y'all go do that.
Keep competing, boys.
Yeah.
Something else I learned from the most random place ever, September 1981 copy of Wavelength magazine. Did you grow up just a few blocks away from Ed?
Yeah, around the corner.
No kidding. So did you know him at all?
Well, I knew him, but he didn't know me because he's a couple of years older.
I was going to say, there's a little bit of an age gap.
I was friends with his younger sister.
Okay.
And so we would hang out there sometimes, and when I was in 8th grade, freshman year, Ed's band used to rehearse. Camille was in the band too. They used to rehearse about 2 blocks from our houses.
Okay.
So we used to go sit, in the wind and listen to them rehearse and think they were pretty cool.
Yeah.
But we used to hang out at Ed's house, and after Ed moved out, I mean, because my high school band, we played parties in the basement and stuff. We'd always think, hey, maybe Ed'll come and sit in with us, Right.
Yeah.
But when he moved out, I'll say this: when he moved out, he left most of his notebooks of songs.
Okay.
And if you this was like by the time he was in senior in high school. If you measured linear distance of his notebooks that he left at his house, they were stacked against the wall. There's about 4 feet of notebooks of songs he had written.
No kidding.
And I paged through one of them. I still remember one of them. It's called "Never Go Fishing with Another Man's Bait."
I think I've heard that before somewhere. No,
I mean, but he was writing that stuff even in high school.
That's amazing.
You know, it was yeah. He was, when we were kids. I mean, he was the kid that wandered around the neighborhood with a book. You know, like, you know, we were like, man, what's that guy doing?
Yeah.
But
yeah, crazy person. You know, walking around reading.
Yeah.
It's like we got ourselves a reader. Yeah.
You know, but he was. I mean, he really is a wordsmith, and it's a craft that he's worked at, you know, his whole life. You know, he from what he told me, and I might be remembered a little bit wrong, but you know, years ago when we talked about it, he was, you know, basically he wanted to be a poet, and then realized that people don't really listen to poets, but if you sing it, you got an audience.
Yeah.
And then he discovered Ray Charles, and that's all she wrote.
Nice. That's, yeah, I mean, he probably writes the bulk of the lyrics for most of y'all's catalog.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Dave writes. Dave's a slower writer than Ed is. Like, I think it takes Dave a lot longer to craft a song, but Ed's been doing it nonstop for, you know, 50 years, 60 years. So he's got a little bit of jump on it, and it's also his primary thing that he does. You know, where for Dave, it's not the primary thing.
Yeah. I don't mean to go back and forth too much, but there is another. Yeah, you don't care. There is one more, and it was reminded me earlier by Andre when I saw him today. I said, "Oh, I'm going to see Reggie tonight, and I'm definitely going to bring up Road Apple." But I wanted to ask you about a James Booker story, if you can tell it, if it's legal to tell it. And for anyone who hasn't seen the Bayou Maharaja movie or listened to David Cunion's radio documentary on James Booker, I don't mean to say stop this video right now and do that, but it's phenomenal. You should absolutely make the time to watch it, and you definitely hear from Reggie on there as well.
It's a fascinating insight into a guy who is misunderstood most of the time.
Yeah. The story's about removing the eye patch just in the middle of a set. Like, how's this look?
True.
How's this look?
That's true. He did that to me the first gig I ever played with him. I was like,
just trying to mess with you?
No, there was a guy flirting with him, and he was trying to get the look, you know, trying to get his look together. So, and it was a small stage. It was at this play. The first gig I did when it was on Mother's Day at a black gay bar in the French Quarter called the Rawhide.
Okay.
The stage was really low, and he was playing like a little spinner piano or something. I mean, it was jammed tight.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he and this guy are like, you know, doing the thing, you know.
While he's playing piano.
Oh, his hands were completely disconnected from his brain. He was playing amazing stuff, but he wasn't paying any attention to it. And so then he turns in. He had a little toiletry bag next to him on the bench, and he starts digging through it while he's playing. He's doing 3 things at once, you know. And he pulls out a patch, and he turns around and looks at me, and he sticks it on. He says, "How's this look?" I was like, I don't know, man. I guess it looks all right. How about this one? I was like, yeah, that looks good. So he takes it off, and he puts it on, and he's like, "How you doing?" I was like, whoa, man, that was my introduction to Booker.
That's great. First gig right at the gate. There is a different story though. That's not the one that I was asking about.
Does this involve a beer pitcher?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
But now if there's other ones, then yeah, I definitely want to hear it. This one involves a gig at OPP, Orleans Parish Prison.
Yes.
Sneaking a bag of weed into the prison for James Booker.
That's true.
That's true. Okay,
it was
good.
me. I'll tell you what happened. It was me and Jim Sherrick, who was his normal drummer at the time, but for some reason, I'm not sure what, Booker was going to use the opening band that was going to play for us at Parish Prison.
I didn't know that there were gigs at the prison, by the way. Was that a thing regularly?
It was part of some kind of you know, some program that helped with the rehabilitation or
some kind of like basic recreational activity.
Yeah, something so that I guess they could say they're doing stuff for the prisoners. So but Jim came with us to take pictures. So the three of us get there and we park across the street from the prison, and we're getting out, and Booker pulls out this gigantic bag of weed, and he goes, wait a minute. He says, I got to stick this in my pants. We're like, wait, man, you can't bring this into parish prison. He goes, he says, it's no problem. Everybody knows me there. Like, that's why it's probably not a good idea.
That's a red flag, yeah.
So here we go into the prison, and as soon as we walk in the thing, all the guards, hey, Booker, how you doing? Everybody knows him. So we get to the yard, and there's the stage set up, and the opening band was Willie T.
Okay.
With Earl Turbington on sax. Oh man, what's his name? The bass player. I can't think of his name offhand. And Johnny Vodakovich.
All right, that's a pretty good band.
Yeah. Oh God, I can't remember this bass player. His name's gonna kill me. But anyway, so we're standing there waiting to play, and then they finish, and we're getting ready to get off. And he's going to use Johnny Vodakovich and Earl Turbington. Okay, at this point, I hadn't been playing bass really that long, like just maybe hardly like a blink. So, and I didn't really even have any business playing with James Booker because it was way in the deep end of the pool. But he liked me because I didn't know anything, and he could just tell me to do this.
Yeah. And
I would do it because I didn't know enough to argue with him.
Yeah.
So. Before we get on stage, the guy says, look, he says, all of the people in the front of the stage, those first three rows, those are the worst guys, and we put them there to keep an eye on them. If they start moving, y'all jump off the back of the stage and run through this door. We're like, okay, great. So we get up on stage. And the first thing that happens is all the gay guys with the little, they all have like handkerchief bras on.
Okay.
And they're all jumping up and down in front of Booker, hey, Booker, how you, his fan club. And so now we're getting ready to start playing, and Booker says, okay, we're going to do When the Saints Go Marching In. And I was like, wait, I don't know how to play that. I never played it before. But they're not just doing Saints Go Marching In. They're doing like a John Coltrane version. Like some weird, man, I'll tell you what, within like 2 or 3 measures, I didn't know what the hell was going on. And Johnny Vodakovich we didn't know each other really. He's sitting there looking at him like, where the hell did they get this guy from?
This isn't the song. I know how to play this song. That's not the song.
I was like, geez, man, it was pretty nerve wracking. But
who was the weed for? Just to give
that was
out
for
to
him. He just had it with him.
Oh, he just wanted to have it with him.
Yeah, because he was going somewhere afterward where I guess he was going to smoke it.
I was going to say, if he had a little like, hey, I hook up the prisoners every time I come
but he
here.
did offer to take me around and show me all the cells he had stayed in. I was like, nah, that's okay.
Yeah, no.
And then we ended up having lunch with all the guys in the big dining room. It was white beans and rice.
All right. I'm sure Booker was very popular.
Oh, he was a celebrity there.
That's great. Every once in a while you hear, like, obviously he was long dead before, I mean, right after I was born. Right. I would not have met him. But the stories that I hear are always amazing. What's the beer pitcher story? I'm intrigued now.
He did a gig at the Maple Leaf one night and just decided not to go to make it all the way back to the bathroom instead. Just do it on the stage.
That's par for the course when I had Hank in here telling some stories.
It cleared the club.
Yeah.
See, those are the stories that like Jed Palmer, those are the kind of stories that you relate to him, man, because he pulled stuff like that at his club.
Yeah.
I mean, he that guy was totally nuts. Mm-hmm. He was more nuts than Booker.
Yeah.
Because Booker he needed meds to stay what he, I mean, he had a real sickness. Jed was just crazy.
Yeah. That's what I've heard at the very least. True or not, Eddie Money? You were in Eddie Money's band?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what happened was
This is before he had broke, right? Like
this is right before.
Okay.
What happened was I was playing this blues circuit in the Bay Area, and he was also he had his band and they were playing like the Long Branch and rock and roll clubs.
Yeah.
But he used to come hang out in the blues club sometimes and sit in. And I got to tell you, that guy was a hell of a singer. Mm-hmm. Man, he would jump up there. We'd do Jackie Wilson songs, all kinds of. He nailed it. But he was totally crazy. So he was like, hey, you want to be in my band? I was like, and it was me and another guitar player that I was working with, and we're like, yeah, sure, because me and the other guitar player were trying to put together a band, kind of like the band, and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And we were like, yeah, okay, we'll come check it out, and so he had a warehouse in downtown Oakland that was kind of like, I guess, his clubhouse. Mm. And man, this was like the most out of control mom's ball 24/7.
Oh wow!
I mean, way past the mom's ball. His whole scene was like totally insane. Mm. You go to his apartment, there'd be somebody like passed out with a needle in their arm.
Oh,
he had like a 15 or 16-year-old girlfriend who was pregnant. I mean, the whole scene was just nuts.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And he had and the drummer he got for the band was a guy who just got out of San Quentin with a meth problem who played a ballad like at about 150 miles an hour. So it was kind of crazy. But he kept saying, I'm gonna be famous. I'm gonna be famous, and I mean, he was just nuts, man.
Yeah.
And then and that was happening right when Fest called me. Mm-hmm. So when Fest called me, and I was like, yeah, I'm on the next plane. Mm-hmm. Then I had
there's this 16-year-old that's pregnant with a syringe in her arm. I think I'm ready to walk away from this.
Yeah. Well, then when I told Eddie, I said, hey, look, man, I'm not gonna be able to do your band because I'm moving back to New Orleans. I'm playing with Professor Longhair, and he goes, I don't know why you quit my band to go play with a college professor. And I'm thinking, that's exactly why I'm doing it.
That's classic, man.
That was my time with Eddie Money.
All right. Did you keep in touch with him over the years?
No, not really.
All right. No. Any of that Take Me Home Tonight or 2 Tickets to Paradise Days? Nothing like that?
Nah. Hey, we did do the most bizarre gig we did was on an aircraft carrier, though.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it was one of these things that were getting ready to be deployed to the Mediterranean for 6 months or a year or something. So they had like a big show for the families, I guess, and everything. And except for us, everybody else in the show were people like somebody that was on Room 222, or like these, or Maury Amsterdam from the Dick Van Dyke Show. Yeah. These kind of like these old time comedians like. Mm-hmm. Take my wife, please take my. Those kind of Henny Youngman. It was all of that kind of stuff, and us. But because we had a group, they gave us the captain's quarters for the dressing room, which immediately turned into like a gigantic desk full of coke. Because those guys were like, they were hardcore, man. They got in place, and they had a guy that travel with the band, that's what his job was.
Oh man, yeah.
So man, as soon as we got in there, man, they were like lining this stuff up, and me and the guitar player that I'd been playing with, we were like, Jesus Christ, we're gonna get thrown in jail and everything.
No kidding. It sounds a little crazy. I don't know.
It was pretty nuts.
But it must be cool to be in a band that has a coke guy. That's his only job. I mean, maybe it was cool when you were younger, I guess.
Yeah, but I wasn't super into it, so it's like I'd have been more like, you got anything else?
Yeah. Give me some wine, give me some weed.
Yeah, something normal, man.
That's great. A friend of a friend actually was that guy for Toto, I think 35 years ago.
Oh man,
yeah.
I tell you what, after Jeff Porcaro died, every time I went to L.A., man, people would do double takes because apparently we almost looked like twins.
Yeah, I'd have to look at another photo like side by side.
I'd go in music stores and people like do double takes, and it took me a while to figure. Somebody said, "Man, you look just." I said, "Oh, okay, that's what's going on."
Faked your own death, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you used to be in Toto.
And a drummer.
yeah, I guess so. So you're back post Eddie Money. You're in Fest's band and also sitting with Booker, and I guess also doing Road Apple gigs and playing just
anything
with Dave
I can
in general.
pick up. Yeah.
Tell me about the infamous day at Ed's Garage.
Well, what had happened was, Dave and I had Road Apple. We were playing, and it was going along okay, nothing great. And the Rhapsodizers at that time was starting to come apart because Atlantic Records had showed up on the scene, and they were interested in Becky, but they weren't interested in the rest of the band. And Becky was going to make the jump. Okay. And so they were, So I think it was kind of like a preemptive strike. Ed called me and Dave up and was like, hey, you guys want to come over and jam in the garage one day?
You saw the writing on the wall for the Rhapsodizers, probably.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And Dave and I were like, and I was like, yeah, man.
Yeah, you had known him since you were a kid.
I was like, I'm ready. You know?
Yeah.
So we went over there, and really there was no expectation other than just jamming and sitting around and smoking some weed and drinking beer and just kind of visiting and having a nice afternoon. But once we started playing, it just didn't stop. I mean, it just kept going on, and finally it was like 5 hours later, and we were like, this is the band.
Yeah.
This, and Ed's one caveat, he was like, well, and that was a Saturday afternoon. He's like, okay, we can be a band, but we have to get together Monday and see if we can learn one of my songs, because I don't want to I don't want to do covers. I want a band that does my material. So let's see if we can do it. So we got together that Monday, even though I think on Sunday everybody quit their bands.
All right. Well, I was going to ask you this as a parlay into this story. Did you quit Fess's band, or did you get fired from Fess's band?
Everybody got fired from Fess's band.
Yeah. Okay.
And we all got fired on that day that we went to Ed's rehearsal studio.
Did you find out before or after?
We found out before that we were all getting fired.
Oh, wow.
Our last gig was that night at the Dream Palace.
Oh, so you still had a gig that night with Fess?
Yeah, that was our last gig.
Oh, man.
So talk about it just, the turnover was right on the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
that's like a magical moment in history. Like, who knows what could have happened one day or 1 hour,
look,
2
man,
hours, whatever.
My whole career has been nothing except just being lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. Everything else, it was gravy, but that's really that's why I'm sitting right here, because I just lucked out,
It's more than luck. Don't worry.
Well,
you got
it's work and stuff,
but
but I mean, in this business, I mean, there's a lot of guys that can, rip me up in a minute.
So far, every musician you've talked about locally should have been rich, famous millionaires.
That's what I'm saying. It is just luck, to just be where it's going to happen, and I was. But that day at Ed's, and then we got back together on that Monday, and Ed said, "Okay, I got a song called Red Dress," and we started fooling around with it, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Dave had this guitar intro, and we're like, yeah, and 20 minutes later, man, we had the song, and it was like, okay, we're in, and that was, we didn't look back. We didn't look forward, but we didn't look back.
Was Red Dress part of the Rhapsodizers catalog at all, or was that just straight one of Ed's?
I think that was one of Ed's, but we did do a lot of the Rhapsodizers catalog, like Hardcore. I think Automatic might have been theirs. Suck the Head, obviously, and a few other things. Total Evaporation, I think, might have been one of the Rhapsodizer songs. But yeah, Ed carried over some stuff. But he was writing so much at the time that I think he probably thought of stuff as being obsolete by the time he finished it and was moving on to the next thing. So we had those first couple of years. We had more amazing material than we could even handle. He was just
in the zone, cranking them out.
Yeah, they were just coming, and it kept like that the whole time we were together.
Yeah. Right off the bat, you guys hadn't come up with the name of the Radiators yet. You just kind of making up names.
No, we didn't even make up names. We just told Club, hey, just name it something, because everybody knows it's going to be us. So so then it was the Weema Whoppers, and it was Dem Neighborhood Boys, and all these stupid names. And finally, we were like, if we're going to have a crummy name, we at least we ought to think of it ourselves and not let somebody else do it. So we'll come up with our own crummy name. So back into the garage with the beer and the weed, and then we just sat around for a couple of hours going, how about this? How about this name? How about this? And finally, you just wear down. And finally I said, how about Radiators? And everybody's like, yeah, fine, that's great.
That'll work this week, yeah.
Yeah, and we're like, let's just use that for now, and we're going to change it later when we have time to deal with that, because now we're dealing with too much other stuff.
Yeah.
And, that never happened, so...
Is there a worst possible name that came up that you thought was the dumbest idea? Weemawaba sounds a little ridiculous.
All of them except for Radiators, and that sounded not too good. But none of them sounded good because they all sounded like we were trying to think of like the coolest name in the world. And of course, when you do that, you're going to come up with the worst stuff possible.
Yeah, sometimes it's better just to name yourself after a noun.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Who or the band. That was like the most genius name ever.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much, yeah. They hit it right on the head.
I'm the
and
band.
now there's another alternative. Well, I don't know when these guys formed up. The Radiators from Australia.
Oh, they're as old as we are.
So was there one of y'all who was first? Any idea?
I think we beat them by a month or so.
Okay.
But I've been in contact with their drummer over the years because at the beginning, when we signed with Sony, people were getting us mixed up. Mm-hmm. And they even have some of their songs the same. They got a song called Automatic. They got a song called Confidential. So it's all that kind of stuff.
Doesn't help, yeah.
No, and at one point, me and the drummer were emailing back and forth going, this is insane. Because they didn't even come to, they only traveled in Australia, South America, and Asia.
Yeah, so they didn't even come to the States.
They didn't even come to the States, and we never went to any of those places. So.
Yeah. Well, and sure enough, with the way technology has gone, and we ran into this when we were doing an anniversary show last year, the year before, we were selling tickets on TicketWeb or Eventbrite or whatever it was, and it kind of autofills. It'll just use the data. Hey, the Radiators.
Right.
It'll say, oh, here's their Facebook page. Here's their this. Here's their that. And it came up all the wrong band. It's like, how is this possible?
Oh, look, the first time we went to New York was as Earl King's band. Mm-hmm. And there were people who were upset because they thought they were going to see the Radiators from Mars, the German punk band. I'm like, sorry, that's wrong band.
Yeah, Earl King doesn't look like a German punk rocker.
Oh, Earl King didn't show up for the gig either. So.
Didn't help. How did you guys end up getting mixed up with Earl King? Because you were his backing band for a little while, huh?
Oh, yeah, for several years.
Okay.
The Rhapsodizers were his backup band.
Okay, yeah.
And so we just kind of inherited it.
Gotcha.
But I'd known Earl for years before that. Man, he was a trip. Mm-hmm. But he didn't show up at those gigs in New York because he didn't realize when they were booked that he was going to be flying up there on Friday the 13th. So we're like about we're like 2 hours away from the gig at the sound check, and this is before cell phones. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to run him down. Finally, we catch him, which is a bad sign right off the bat. Yeah. That he answers the phone. You're like, Earl, what's up? He's like, man, I forgot it was Friday 13th. I can't fly today, man. We're like, yeah, but you got a gig in New York in about 2 hours, and we're here, and the guy is like freaking out. Mm-hmm. He goes, oh, man. And he said, besides, I had to help somebody move today. It's like, okay.
Way to make the career a priority.
Yeah, but look, he was a trip, man. I love that guy, man. Yeah. He came to me one time, and he's like, hey, man, because we'd gone out to eat one time, and he's like, man, you eat like that all the time? I was like, yeah, I love to eat. Because this was like, I was like in my 20s, and I weighed about 120 pounds back then. And he goes, you want to make some money? I was like, yeah, what you got? He goes, I will call you. I said, okay. So he called me up about a week later, and he goes, hey, man, what you doing tomorrow? I said, I had nothing going on. He goes, meet me at Eddie's at 1 o'clock down, Eddie's Soul Food back on Law Street. And I said, okay, what's up? He goes, we're going to make some money. I said, okay. So I showed up, and he was sitting there with these two guys, and one of them was, man, this guy was gigantic. And I walked in, the guy looked at me, he goes, that's your guy? I was like, and I didn't know I didn't at that point.
You still didn't even know what you were doing.
Yeah. And Earl goes, because he told me, he said, bring some money too. I said, okay. So we sit down, and Earl's laughing. He goes, yeah, you laugh at him. He says, well, let's put our money up. And so he says, okay, now he said, I hope you're ready to eat. I said, I'm always ready to eat. So we started on the Poor Boys, man. And I tell you what, that guy didn't have a chance.
Yeah.
We did this several times until he ran out of people who didn't know what was going on. We never left without the money.
No kidding. Was it a speed contest or a more you can eat contest?
All you can eat, but I was a speed eater anyway. Yeah. So like I could look. One time I nailed all my stuff, and Earl hadn't finished his. I was like, I'm gonna eat that too, man. This guy was like, okay, I can't. But Earl was, I mean, that's, you know, Earl just had a lot of, you know, he had a lot of stuff going on.
That's amazing. That's
he was a trip, man. I loved hanging out with that guy. I learned a lot of stuff from him too. You know, I mean, he was, before I was even really playing with anybody, I would hang. I met him at the KB on Louisiana and St. Charles through a friend of mine who was interviewing him, and after that, I would just kind of like accidentally on purpose show up there and hang out with him, you know, and that's how I got to know him. But man, he was great. And I remember one time I went down there and he'd just gotten back from Europe, and I was like, man, I'd love to be in a band and go to Europe and all that. And, you know, he says, you know, he said, it's nice and everything, but you'll find out that you like coming back to New Orleans, because when you're doing all those shows and all that stuff and people making a big deal out of you and they never leave you alone, he says, you'd be glad to be back here and just see what I'm doing, sitting at this counter, nobody's bothering me. He says, you're gonna want to do that one day.
That's pretty great. Yeah, I guess some of those old dudes, when they went to Europe, it was not, I mean, some people had great success and they were real happy. I heard James Booker enjoyed awesome success in Europe and was very happy with all of his time there.
Yeah.
And some people were extremely skeptical. I heard a story about Professor Longhair going to England, I think, for the first time. And this is a Quint story that I heard.
He brought his sandwiches?
Yeah, he brought a bag of hot dogs and a bag of buns. He had 8 hot dogs and 8 buns because he was going for 8 days.
Yeah.
Because he didn't know if they would have any food there that he could eat.
Well, this might have been on the same trip, and I think George was on this, but the story I heard was they were riding on the bus, and this was a few days into the tour, and George was like, God, what's that smell, man? And he finally found it. It's a bag of old hot dogs on the Festus seat, and he's like, what is this? Festus, like, it's my food. He says, man, you can't eat this stuff here. This stuff's going bad, man.
Packed hot dogs for the road. That's great. Okay, let's get back to Radiator stuff. If I don't talk enough about the Radiators, all the Rads fans are going to get really upset with me.
That's okay. They're getting background stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
This is all Rads related.
Yeah. Don't worry. We're not even recording this. Don't worry. No one will ever see it. Something that I think you guys have also recognized owes to a lot of your success is those early years before you would hit the road playing gigs at the Tulane Quad.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
Those are famous gigs. I went to Tulane. I remember hearing about them. I remember seeing you guys at the Quad. And you built up a bunch of kids. And Tulane is a very mixed bag of kids from all over the country.
That was those early years on the Quad, and having Tulane people plug into us. Mm-hmm. That's really what got us off the ground, because a lot of these people were tapers. They would send in tapes. They trade tapes back and forth. They sending them back to the East Coast.
Well, the technology had probably just gotten affordable so that anyone could buy a cassette player recorder.
And you were starting to see serious, tapers starting to show up with, pretty good machines and stuff for the time. And at that time, tape trading was a big deal. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like it is now, where you just go online and get the stuff.
Yeah, you do it on your phone with your thumb. You know?
So all these tapes were going back and forth, and we didn't really realize that was happening. I mean, we knew it was happening, but we didn't really realize what the result was. Mm-hmm. And as far as we were concerned, people wanted to tape the shows. That was great. If you want to go to the trouble of taping, have at it. That's great if you like it that much. So what we didn't realize until the first trip we made, not with Earl, but the first trip is the Radiators. Man, there were people at all the shows. They were sold out. They were, crowds of people, and we were like, what's going on? And finally, it was like people would come up, oh man, got your tape from the Quad or this or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we started realizing, man, this is like a grassroots phenomenon for us. That's basically a smaller version of what happened with the Grateful Dead. Mm-hmm. Just kind of a word of mouth and a fan base who is, totally into the scene. Mm-hmm.
Well, they were from all over, and you guys were playing something else. If you look at one of those old Wavelength magazines, you see Radiators gigs, 10, 11, 12 shows a month around town. You're playing Tips every other Thursday, Jed's and the Maple Leaf and
Dream
the
Palace.
Dream Palace.
And plus the Wednesday night at Luigi's.
At Luigi's, exactly.
So we were playing we'd play 4 or 5 nights a week, in New Orleans. And after the first 2 years, that's when we started realizing, you know what, we got to get out of town because we're just burning the audience out. Yeah. And also we were thinking, if people like it this much here, there's no reason they're not going to do that somewhere else.
Yeah, and seemingly there was a team of people doing all of your marketing for you by giving their tapes to their brothers, their cousins, whatever else in California, in Seattle, and also, in New York. Yeah. Also,
Ed was starting to emerge too as some sort of a. I mean, I don't know what quite the word is to use. I don't want to use shamanistic, but you know, he started emerging as somebody that fans were locking into because of his lyrics and his songs and also he was writing, you know, our monthly schedules were being mailed out on the mailing list, and he always wrote his stuff on it, you know, his manifestos and everything. And he was developing his own kind of stage persona that people were like really, you know, locking into. So all of that kind of stuff was going on, and it all just kind of added to the image of the band was starting to emerge at that time, you know, as we started getting on the road. But it was, man, I tell you what, those were great times.
Well, I think, like you said, his persona and whatever else, and self-admittedly, I think he'll probably say this too, that he not so much borrowed, but was very influenced by Dr. John, the Dr. John persona, you know, the coming on, not necessarily. And he has a lot of Dr. John isms where he'll make up some words here and there But
I have to say, he was like that as a kid too.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah,
this wasn't something that happened with psychedelics when he was in college or something.
No, he was always on that path.
Okay.
You know, that's why to me it always seemed so natural what we did, because he was just being him.
Yeah, he didn't turn it off or turn it on as soon as he steps on stage.
No, and he didn't turn it off either, because I mean, you talk to fans over the years and they're like, "Oh man, I saw Ed, but I was too petrified to go talk to him." You know, I mean, he, you know, that was just his aura, and he was like that all the time. You know, so. I mean, as he got older, it probably got a little bit more pronounced, just the same way everybody gets a little bit more.
I suppose. The
way they are as they get older. He is what he is, you know, and people responded to it. You know, his lyrics were things that were clever enough, you know, and image evoking enough to reel people in.
Yeah.
You know, and he had a sense of humor about it too. I mean, look, I'd rather waste you than see you wasted on somebody else. I mean, you know.
I was going to ask if there was not any kind of reasoning or any kind of explanation. What is the explanation? And this, I don't want this to sound like a rude question in the least bit. What's the explanation for y'all's cult-like following for the past 40 years? Like,
I think
it's like a cult almost. It's not like a cult, but it's
more like a family.
Yeah, that's a much better word than cult. I'm sorry.
It's of all the fan bases I'm aware of, it's the most welcoming and the most inclusive of any fan base that I'm aware of, and there's an openness to our fans. I think that is in part again that Ed vibe, you know, with his lyrics and everything. If you read through his lyrics, I mean, he's all about, you know, positivity, that kind of stuff, and I think our fans, I think all fans look for that in whoever they're going to go see or be a fan of, and ours, I think, you know, found whatever that is with Ed's music and whatever we do with it, and also, you know, you have Ed as that kind of leader thing. And then you also have Dave, who puts it in a more like a real availability, I guess you might call it. Like he's an approachable guy.
Ed seems almost too serious sometimes, and Dave is the joker.
And that's the two sides, you know, of the whole Radiator thing. And, you know, I think between those two things, I think people they just find something in that just makes them feel connected and connected to everybody else in the scene. You know,
well, something interesting. Sorry to cut you off. It's almost like you guys have your own individual sets of fans too. Like there's aside from the pockets of fans that exist in the crews all over the country, but just like the Beatles, some people are a big Ringo fan. Or John or
absolutely.
Paul. There's Ed fans, there's Dave fans, there's Camille fans, there's Reggie fans, there's Frank fans.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious. It's adorable.
And it's funny. Well, you know, it's funny too because when we first started going on the road, you know, we all did things together. You know. And then as you're on the road more and more, you know, everybody starts getting their own friends. As the decades
start to add up.
You start getting your own social groups on the road. And then you get to the point where you hardly see anybody in the band on the road anymore.
Yeah, you only see each other on the plane flying back from the gigs,
like
right?
on the gigs. Hey, man, how you doing? But as you spend more and more years on the road together, that's probably a good thing.
yeah, probably. That might owe to some of the longevity that existed for so long. It's interesting, like you said, but when you guys first hit the road, immediately you started seeing, like, instead of having to slug it out from day one, hitting the road and have to hit this market 6 times before we saw any kind of growth, you guys had that almost immediately.
We did, and for 2 reasons. First of all, like you were saying with the tape trading and all that. The other thing was there wasn't nearly the competition that there is now. Like,
how do you mean?
As many bands on the road.
Oh, okay.
Like when we started touring, you know, there was us and the Thunderbirds and, you know, a few other bands like that.
Most touring bands were getting radio play and everything else.
Yeah, most touring bands were like, you know, Van Halen or something like that. Bands like us, they're you know, those intermediate, mid-level, there wasn't a whole lot of that going on, and there weren't really a whole lot of places to play either. So it was a little bit easier to get a foot up, you know. Nowadays, I mean, when we started with the Suspects, I mean, that was way harder, and that band had a you know,
it was
people
an
with
all-star super jam from
with the
one.
resumes were out the box, and you know, all that got us was a foot in the door. You know, it didn't give us anything else, and to me that really showed a big change in how, you know, in just the amount of competition you're up against now.
Yeah.
So if the Rads happened today, I don't know if that would happen.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, there's probably a bunch of great rock and roll bands out there that are
There's tons of them.
That might be way better than the Rads were back then,
and that's
what
I was
they might
saying.
never make it.
That's what I was saying earlier. There's guys that can play bass way better than me, but for whatever reason, they weren't in the right place at the right time, you know, and they're still slugging it out, you know. That's really, I mean, being able to play and have chops and everything is a big part of it, but man, luck is like, that's a really big part of it.
Well, yeah, luck and the sheer unlikelihood that an unsigned band is selling out clubs around the country.
Oh, yeah.
Unsigned. And when you did get signed, was there pressure to build more commercial? Because you get signed by record labels, like, cool, we're not making money off records right now, so...
Well, when we got signed, well, first of all, we almost didn't get signed because we didn't believe the guy who was calling us was actually anything more than a janitor over at CBS. So we were like, because you're like, hey, look, man, I'm the head of A&R. I'm going to get you signed. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And we're like, yeah, right, okay, right. And finally, we were like, okay, let's listen to what the guy's got to say. And Michael Kaplan was the head of the A&R department.
All right.
And the reason he was interested in us is because he had come to the Lone Star to see us. Okay, we're an unsigned band.
That's in New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lone Star Mac used to play there, and it was like that kind of a club. And so he came to see us, and you know, we were there on I think a 3-day run or something, sold out every night. And he was impressed by that, but he was more impressed by the fact that everybody in the club sang all the songs with us, and none of those songs had ever been recorded.
Yeah, never heard one of these songs before.
He was
all
like,
these people know them.
I got to get these guys. So that's how we got with CBS, and they pressured us to do some stuff like you know, when Los Lobos had a big hit with La Bamba, okay, then the big thing was everybody's got to do a cover.
Okay.
So they forced us to do. We wanted to do Brown Eyed Girl, which man, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's already a hit.
It's a hit.
Yeah.
We do a great version of it. Women love Dave singing the song. It's a no-brainer. But instead they had us do some It's All Right, some forgettable nothing song that you couldn't even change. Like, it's one of these songs you couldn't do any other.
Couldn't make it your own.
No.
Yeah.
So, and of course, it never got played on the air. I mean, it was a total bomb. That was the most pressure. And then when we got around to the third album, that's when Sony had bought CBS, and it turned from being a record company that kind of supported their acts and kind of brought them along. They didn't expect you to have a hit record, right out the gate.
Yeah.
They fostered you in your career. When Sony bought CBS, that whole thing changed, and it was like, we want hit 45s. Everything's got to be a hit. If you borrow a rubber band, it's going to go on your account. You got to pay for. It became bean counter thing.
Yeah.
And the president of the company turned from a guy Ray Anderson, who was a music nut and kind of crazy anyway, to a guy who was an accountant, basically. And who showed up at work in a three-piece suit. Ray Anderson showed up at work from the night before, still
powder on his nose. Yeah.
Well, that happened on the desk as soon as you got in the office, But I mean, the point is, this guy was interested in music and a fan. Where I forget
the music
guy's
business is about the business, not the music, right?
Yeah, and then Dave Glue, that was the guy who took over for Sony, and he was just a bean counter. I don't even think he cared for music one way or the other. It was like selling linoleum or cars or anything else, And that was kind of and also at that point they were letting probably half their roster go, and we asked, Michael Kaplan said, look, I'll keep you on, get you the next album and the budget, and we're like, if you really want to do us a favor, get us released from this contract, let us go. So that's what we did.
Well, something else I didn't realize until this week, doing a little bit of homework for you, that maybe I had heard someone say it before and I had no idea, but you guys actually filmed a couple music videos.
Oh, yeah.
What was there any reason why you guys tried to move forward with that? Did it seem...
Well, that was something that...
Was this with CBS still? Were you with them?
Yeah.
Okay, so they probably told you got to do this.
Oh, you had to do it, yeah.
Try and get on MTV or something.
That's exactly right. The first video was Dreamers, like Dreamers do, and it was terrible. Dave's
got great hair in it, though.
Dave's always got great hair because he's got a fan. So
that's true.
The guy they sent down to do the video was, this guy was just coked out of his mind. He was, he didn't have an idea. He hired some girl that he met here one night to be in the video, and it was just...
Actually, he filmed a piece of it here, right?
Part of it was filmed here. The other part was in the Honey Island Swamp, where they expected us to get in the water with these gigantic spiders. Then they had Ed. They moved the piano
Ed's piano was in the swamp.
Well, yeah, but they had him out there in the swamp, and we were telling him, man, they got alligators out here. Man, you can't have this guy out there like that. And then the second video is actually pretty hilarious because we got a guy that had done one of Stevie Ray Vaughan's videos, and he was a trip, man. We did a Suck the Head video that Ray Anderson at Sony loved. MTV said, you got to be kidding. They played it one time at 4 a.m. They said, okay, that's it.
That's it.
But that was hilarious. It was they flew in 2 models from LA that were supposed to be these girls that were hanging around the French Quarter, and they go in the bar and they see these people eating crawfish, and
there happens to be a band at a table playing a song. Obviously,
and we all have an instrument sitting at the table eating crawfish.
That's what happens in the French Quarter.
Have you
seen these videos, The Great Pete Jones?
It's very realistic.
One is one of my favorite videos of all time.
Yes,
it's genius.
It's super realistic too. It shows. It shows.
That is the pure New Orleans. That's the joie de vivre. Yeah.
It's right up there with Private Eyes.
So no plans to make any other music videos ever? Were those the only 2? Were there any others on the scene?
Man. That was it. That was plenty. I mean, to me, I don't. That's not anything I really have any interest in doing.
No, and that's why I was so surprised.
No, they made us. They made us do. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I love cameras, and I do a lot of photography.
Yeah,
but
I wanted to ask you about your photography. Yeah,
but man, as far as making videos for music, man, to me, that's just a complete waste of time.
No, well, I mean, the concert though is different, obviously. But trying to make a music video, like, hey, this is a little contrived.
You know, and it's not really. I mean, I can see for like somebody like Britney Spears, that's part of of how the song goes. For a band like the Rads, man, it's just. It just doesn't make any sense, you know.
Well, you already had endured touring success, not commercial success.
Yeah,
like you didn't have hits that were for the mainstream audience. You already had an audience, and it was slowly building on its own without having to do extra marketing or anything like that.
It was building on its own, and CBS. I mean, they did help. I mean, some of the releases got made it pretty far up, but the real thing that CBS did for us was plugged us into their marketing system.
Okay.
They did a lot of marketing on us.
Probably got your records in more stores at the very least. They made it possible
for us when we left them to continue for another 20 years.
Okay.
You know, that's what they did for us. You know, they didn't sell a lot of records, but they made our name big enough to put us in places, to do gigs for a long time. So that was really, to me, that was the biggest takeaway from that contract.
Well, and one more thing while we're talking about videos. When's the last time you went back and watched the 25-year anniversary video that you guys filmed here? What's it called? Earth versus the Radiators.
Actually, I watched it about 3 or 4 years ago, part of it, yeah.
Well, I'm only bringing it up to pat myself on the back because yours truly is featured in the bonus features maybe for about a second and a half. You wouldn't remember this, but I remember it clearly. That whole weekend, it was 3 nights in a row. And I think they probably only did the cameras on one of the nights, the third night, I think. But I worked the green room. And back then, when I was still a new guy on the door staff, I had only been here not even a year, maybe a year. It's hard to say. But Kevin, who was the manager at the time, thought it was hilarious putting me in the green room because I didn't know. I knew who you guys were. I'd worked the show, so at least I knew the faces of the 5 guys in the band. Didn't know any wives, didn't know any of your friends, didn't know this, didn't know that. And every single one of your wives absolutely hated me by the end of the weekend. And only after you guys broke up in 2011 have they actually started to be nice to me.
Man,
I absolutely.
The only thing I remember about the dressing room that night was that before the whole thing went down, we got a call from Greg Allman's thing, and they were like, Greg has to have his own room by himself with nobody else in it. We're like, oh man, that ain't gonna work.
Yeah. That was the only night I didn't work in the green room between the 2 rooms.
He was cool as hell. He was like, man, I'm cool. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. So we had, we were, that was the tightest night, and it was the 3rd night. So we had already kind of set our ground rules with your backstage friends and fans and everything else, and this is how it's going to be. And then on night 3, when we were all comfortable, it's like, all right, all that shit's out the window. Ain't nobody coming back here. We had a guy at the bathroom door. We had a guy at this door. It was just not happening. Total lockdown.
No, those were fun gigs though, man. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was. I will never forget that weekend. But yeah, I'm on the DVD for any people out there.
Check
Jay,
it out.
My fan Jay.
Check it out.
Yeah, check it out. It's still available for sale, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah, I think you can find it online. Absolutely. Earth versus the Radiators, 25-year.
Yeah, but we did it on the 26th year in true Radiator style. We missed the 25.
You were talking about the 25 previous years. Yeah. That's why it was the 25 years.
We've got a way to rationalize everything. So,
let's talk about your photography a little bit.
Sure.
When did you start taking pictures? I guess
probably in around the mid '80s. We were on the road all the time, and the partying thing, man, just kind of wore me out after about a year or two. And I just was like, man, I'd rather go back to my hotel room and just read, you know. And my wife at the time, she's a watercolor artist. She had just bought a camera to do some work she was working on. I was like, let me go fool with this, you know. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I started realizing most of my friends were photographers, like pros, and I was like, hey, maybe I'll just hit some of these guys up and everybody, a little bit at a time. And, I talked to one guy, hey, what's a good camera to get, what's, that kind of thing. And just kind of got into it, and it was something to do on the road. And I had always been a little bit interested in it because in college I had taken an art class that included the history of, the art history, which included, the guy was young enough at that time where he considered photography art because back in 1970 that was still an issue. So he included work by Man Ray and Dorothea Lange, and it kind of opened my eyes to the realization that photography wasn't just like vacations and birthday parties and stuff. There's actually something you could do with it. And it kind of intrigued me, but I wasn't going to take any time off from practicing bass to go do that. But when the band was traveling a lot, I was like, hey, you know what? I got nothing to do on the road. I'm going to get a camera. So I got a camera, and I started learning the same way that I learned bass, how do you do this? And another guy I knew was a really good darkroom worker, so he helped me get my darkroom skills together. Michael P. Smith helped me.
Very well-known photographer around here.
He was great. He would take me with him to shoot like second line funerals and stuff like that. He really taught me how to function in a moving crowd to take pictures. He was great, really generous, and he was awesome. But and then it just became something that I just developed a passion for, and now it's I kind of split my time doing both things.
Do you still rock the old style with the film? Yeah.
My darkroom's still up and running.
No kidding. You don't have a digital camera at all?
You have. I had one with. I have a camera.
You probably more often than not, I've seen you pull a camera out of your bag. You always carry a bag with you.
I always have a camera with me,
Nice.
24/7. Even when we toured, I always had one on my amp. Just you never knew. In fact, I got some great shots one time at Jazz Fest right as the band finished. It was raining, and all these people were like rolling around in the mud. So me and Michael P. Smith were on the front of the stage. I got to get this.
So would you say you use regular film more often than digital?
I've been working more in digital over the last couple of years, only because with cancer, my doctors are like, being around all those chemicals in the darkroom probably isn't like a super hot idea.
I hadn't even considered that.
So I kind of have backed that down to a minute. I still love working in the darkroom, and I still love shooting film. I love the way it looks. But most of my stuff is in digital now, And also, I started moving toward digital when I was still really on the road a lot. Because the problem of carrying film on airlines is a nightmare.
Yeah, it could get ruined and stuff too.
Yeah, and I stopped carrying film because you always get into arguments with these people about why you can't put it through an X-ray machine. And finally, when I stopped was I was going through an airport, coming home from a gig or something, and she was the TSA agent was like, well, you have to put this through the machine. I said, you can't, it's film. She's like, well, what is that? She's like, I said, well, it's film for a camera. She goes, I don't know what you're talking about. We had to get a supervisor there to clear it for me to not have to put it through the machine. And at that point, I was like, you know what? This is just not worth it. So that's when the digital thing became more and more. But digital cameras now, they're really kind of nice, And there's some things they can do better than the film, you know. But I still love the way black and white film looks, man. There's just nothing that looks like that.
Do you ever show your work? Do you have a website, anything like that?
I used to, but then I just kind of like once I was diagnosed and I was working with the suspects trying to get that off the road, man, everything just kind of took a backseat to cancer and the suspects.
Yeah.
But I used to show a lot. I was with Jonathan Ferrara's gallery.
Okay.
I used to do a lot of shows, but I haven't done one in probably 10 years.
Well, why don't you start up a website or something like that?
I might. I'm too busy shooting. I
was gonna say, While gigs are damn near at a standstill, this would be the ideal time to just go ahead and.
Yeah.
The websites are cheap to own. It's easy to just
they
upload.
are.
We can even have Tanner up in the booth who does not have a microphone. I'll go ahead and tell him that he has to start you a website if you'd like.
Yeah, do what every artist does. Get some nerd to do that for you.
I might do
Tanner.
that because I hate working on computers, man.
It could be something. You know, I know you know how to email.
Oh yeah.
So you can literally
email stuff.
email him these images, and he can just literally just. ReggieScanlon.com. I don't know if that's taken. Is that taken? Do you know?
That was my website like 20 years ago.
Right,
I don't know if
be able to get it back for you.
I don't know.
All right. Tanner will do it for probably a fried shrimp po' boy or something like that.
And my wife gives Photoshop lessons, which is kind of like a dark room on your computer. It's
there you go.
Cool.
Well, I don't need that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll link you in Lizard Up. For sure. You brought up the pancreatic cancer, so I would be remiss if I didn't end up bringing that up.
Oh yeah.
And you are very healthy looking, thank God.
I'm this end of this March will be 9 years.
Wow.
So.
I remember when the announcement came out for folks like us, it was devastating, and everyone was very,
oh man, I'll tell you what, it was the worst was having my family get my family together and tell them that was the worst thing. But I have to say, I mean, I'm lucky in that the best clinic for the particular cancer I have is in New Orleans.
Okay, that's good.
Neuroendocrine pancreatic clinic out in Kenner. They deal with people from all over the world with what I have, and they're amazing. I mean, they've kept me running for almost 9 years. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, I mean, like I said, you seem healthy, and for many years, it's not like
I'm doing really good. You know, I really don't think about it too much unless it's making me think about it. You know, like if I have to go to a doctor's appointment, okay, yeah, I'm thinking about it. If I have to have a procedure done, but like. Say like a day like today, it's not bothering me. Sure, I'm not going to wake up a sleeping snake. It's not, you know. I'm just going to let it. I'm just not going to worry about it. So
yeah,
I kind of you find a place in your life for it, you know, and it's like having a raincoat. You know, you don't think about your raincoat every day, but when it rains, then you get it out and you deal with it. You know, that's kind of how this is.
Well, I do know. I read an interview. I think. It was you were saying something about, oh man, that must have been so scary, and how do you get through that? And it's almost like, well, they say I'm not well. This is my only option. What do I need to be scared about? I either do this and I live. I do this.
That's
I die.
Exactly right. Yeah. People, look, you get, and I talk to other cancer patients about this. In fact, my niece is going through this right now. But you know, people tell you, "Wow, man, you're really brave for doing this, and you're really a hero," and all this stuff. You're really not, because it's nothing you decided to do. You know,
it's like choose.
It's like saying you're brave for being in a car wreck. You know, I mean, you just you like you said, you don't have an option. You're not brave because you're going through it. You're going through it because you're scared out of your mind and you're desperate and you want to live. You know, so
yeah.
The heroes are the doctors that actually put in the time and the effort to like deal with it all.
Yeah. You did mention the suspects also, and I wouldn't want to not mention the suspects because you are absolutely one of my favorite bands also. And I know you don't always play with them so much anymore. And I know that you also had retired, as it were, a couple of years ago. Yeah,
that was, well, there was a retirement because the cancer had spread to my back and for like 3 months. I mean, it was really like at the point where if this is the way it's going to be, I'm not doing this. So, and then it started getting better. But through that, I had been kind of at the point of going to retire from that band anyway.
Was it more you didn't want to leave the burden on them to have to? Well, we can't do any gigs until Reggie's feeling better.
Well, it was a bunch of it. It was part of it was I was getting dissatisfied with the band because it was kind of going in a direction that I was kind of getting bored with. I had different ideas of what the band was going to be when we started it. So I was kind of at the point where it might be a good time to leave, and this is a good reason to implement that decision. So, I mean, there was no hard feelings or anything like that. It was just,
Well, I think I've seen you play with the guys since.
Oh, I've played with them since, and I also kept playing with them when they would do the Paul and Fred thing. Like I was always a part of that because me and Paul, we went back a long ways and we were close friends. But and also they didn't want to have to break in another bass player to learn all the little feet stuff. So, but so I stayed doing that and. But when I quit, it was a clean break, and it was supposed to be not so much me retiring as me retiring from doing a lot of road work. My intention was to stop doing that a lot and just do a lot of local gigs, which kind of is how it worked out. I mean, I still travel with some people sometimes and stuff. Well, obviously not this year, but
when you started the Suspects. You guys had put out the statement, the Radiators had put out the statement, it's probably around October, November, that you were going to be calling it quits next summer. So you had like a 6-month window to be like, all right, this is your last chance. We're going to book a bunch of shows. Come see us now or never type of thing.
Well, what happened, actually the Suspects had been together for about 2 years before that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like,
I got a call from Kevin O'Day one night. He was like, "Hey man, are you in town?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm in town." He said, "You working?" "No, I'm hanging out." He said, "You want to do a gig at the Maple Leaf? They need a band." It's like, "Yeah, sure." So I got over there, and it was Kevin and myself and Jake Eckert and Ccr Groover, neither of whom I knew because I didn't spend enough time in New Orleans anymore to even know who anybody was. Yeah. So, and we did a gig, and it was a lot of fun, And we told Hank, hey, if you have in the situation again, give us a call. And then we started doing, a couple of gigs here and there. And it was kind of low key, when everybody was in town, we just do something. But when the Rads made the announcement that we were going to be retiring from the road, I basically was like, well, I got something going already. So I kind of just took it on my own to do it. I set up the corporation, I did all that kind of stuff, and basically browbeat them into being a band because, well, Jake was with the Dirty Dozen.
Yeah, he was. They were still touring regularly.
Oh,
as
he
well.
was touring. That was the problem. They were touring too much.
Yeah,
and plus his wife wanted him out of the band, and there was a lot of stuff. And
I think they wanted to start a family.
Like, she wanted him home and stuff like that, and she didn't want him running around with a bunch of crazy people. So
they're not all crazy.
Yeah. So,
well, and let me cut you off again. Kevin Harris was in the band originally before Jeff Watkins.
Absolutely, for the year.
Yeah, and I bring this up because I'm sorry, I totally derailed everything you were about to say.
That's okay.
There was a guy that did a show here, and his name was Jesse Hyatt. And it was the Jesse Hyatt Band.
Yeah.
And it had you, it had Jake, it had CR, it had Kevin Harris, I think Kevin O'Day also, and Jesse Hyatt also. And there might have been someone else.
Omar was playing trumpet, I think.
Who's that?
Omar from Johnny Sketch.
I don't think he was, but that's all right. I would remember because I'm the biggest Johnny Sketch fan in the world. We can attest to that. And I would remember if he was on the
You're probably right then.
But I have this poster from the Jesse Hyatt Band. I still have it somewhere. It's probably in a box in a warehouse in Houston by now. But I remember seeing them working that show, obviously. And Jesse was a nice guy, and he had recorded, I think, just an album with this random mix of guys. And then later that year, the New Orleans Suspects was a thing. Was that the first incarnation?
It probably was, but we didn't consider it that.
Well, it was Jesse's thing.
Yeah,
it wasn't. There were none of the same songs.
Because we were doing his album, which had been done in Santa Cruz with all these California guys, and it was kind of an African-oriented sounding album. He was real into that at the time. I like this stuff, and plus he had he picked some cool cover tunes to do, but. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until the Rads made the announcement that I got them, that it really took off.
Okay.
And, and CR was reluctant to do it because he was, he was working a lot on
Royal Southern Brotherhood at the time, maybe?
No, he was working on Frenchman Street, all up and down Frenchman, making money. The Royal Southern Brotherhood, actually, when Willie and I got a call to be in that band.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't really interested for a couple of reasons, but plus I was already looking to do the Suspects, so I didn't want to go do that. But then we added Kevin to the band, and so when the Rads, and it took those 6 months to get everything set up, and I got a booking agent, started getting booked, the whole 9 yards. And so when the Rads did their last shows here, 2 weeks later we were on the road.
Yeah.
And with Kevin, we'd added Kevin by
Kevin
that
Harris,
time.
right?
Yeah. By that time, and Kevin O'Day was out. He had moved to California to do stuff. So my first thing was we're getting Willie because
me and Willie
Neville's.
Green.
Well, me and Willie talked about having a band together for years.
But the Nevilles had called it quits entirely, and that was his main gig.
Yeah, and so I was like, look, man, we've been talking about this for years, and we're doing it now. Because the only other time we'd really had a band was after Katrina. He and Renard Poche and I had a residency at the Maple Leaf. So we kind of got close to having a band, but this was the one. And that's when we went out. That's who it was, and Kevin stayed for about a year, doing both Dirty Dozen and us, and then went back to the Dozen, and then Jeff was like kind of nosing around looking.
Yeah, how'd you land Jeff? Yeah.
Well, he had been living in New Orleans. Apparently, I didn't know him. He had been kind of nosing around, looking for a gig and stuff. And when Kevin quit, we're like, Jeff's got to be the guy, probably,
For those who don't know, Jeff Watkins was in James Brown's band for 12 years, something
He was
like
James
that?
Brown's band director.
Band leader, yeah.
Yeah, band leader for 13 years.
Yeah.
And then after that, he was Josh Stone's band leader for 6 years.
I always forget about that.
He was in Asia somewhere with her when we called him and said, "Hey, you want the gig?" Yes. So that's how we got Jeff, and it was like that for a few years, and then until I left, and then they got actually Charlie Wooten took my place, who was with the Royal Southern Brotherhood.
That's right. That's right.
And then
I think Eric Vogel does it now, right?
Yeah, first they had Charlie, then they had Ron Johnson for a minute.
That's right.
And then Eric's been with them since then.
Yeah, and Willie is retired as well.
Willie quit about, I guess, a year and a half after me. And Eddie Christmas is doing the
Eddie's
drums.
phenomenal. I love him too.
Oh man, I love playing. I play with him in about 2 or 3 bands. Man, I love playing with that guy.
Well, that's just it. You play with so many people all the time. I will be flipping around online, and I'll see you over here with these 3 guys, and then over here with these 2 guys, and then these 9 guys on a sidewalk, whatever else.
That's what's the fun of playing music.
Yeah,
is playing with
just
different
about
people.
No one left in town you probably haven't collaborated with in some way.
The only person I haven't played with that I really wanted to was Irma Thomas.
Well, I mean, the door's not closed yet, right?
Actually, the Suspects was supposed to be her band.
Yeah?
For festivals one summer. Her management kind of blew that.
All right. Well, for anyone who has a direct line to Irma Thomas's management, I think it's her husband.
That's what the problem was.
Reggie's a swell guy, so let him in. But, you've been super generous with your time, and I'm going to wrap this up. The great Pete Jones in the back, one of his hot spots in his resume is roadie on the very last Radiators tour.
Yeah, he was my guy. He was my tech. He was great.
Yeah, so I'm going to pass it over to the great Pete Jones. Do you have a question for Reggie Scanlon?
You already asked most of them. I had 2, though. Why did the band get fired of Fesses? You said that he fired the whole band.
Oh.
What was the reason?
The guy, Eddie Haslam, that's the guy who was managing him when I joined the band.
Not Allison Minor?
No. Eddie, she had left to go move back to Ohio and get married and stuff. Well, when she moved back here, she wanted to take over managing Fess's band again, and which is what happened. She had married a guy who was an alto player who wanted to be a jazz guy, and basically she wanted to put together a band of like all these hot jazz guys that he could play with. So we got fired, and they hired Johnny V and Dave Lee Watson and all these guys, and
like Tony DeGrati.
Yeah,
yeah,
and. And they were all great players. And
yeah,
I mean,
they're all
Fess had a great band with both bands.
Yeah.
That was a little more of Tony didn't play in the band when I was with him. When I was with the band, it was Lon Price and Dave Lasty.
Okay,
those guys. Well, I played with him. It was a more old school band when I was with him. He had Uganda was with him. Big Will was the guitar player. And. It's a bunch of older guys. I was way the youngest guy in the band. Okay. But the new band, when that new band came in, they were all like like Johnny V, Dave Lee Watson. They were all kind of the younger than the guys that were in the band when I was with them. Okay. And the killer band, except for the alto player.
and who wrote the song "Hot Dog"?
Ed
wrote that one. And you already answered my two-part question to that, is why wasn't there a successful video for that song as well to follow up "Suck the Head"? But then because where do you go from that video? "Suck the Head." So you answered that already.
You'd have to ask Ray Anderson that question, because he's the one that okayed the original "Suck the Head" video.
Oh, so good.
Do you have a favorite Radiators song?
Oh man.
You don't have to admit it if you do or don't.
I guess because we're talking about "Suck the Head," that one always made me giggle. So.
Hey, Ed wrote that on the way to a gig here, man.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Do you have a favorite Radiator song?
Probably, if I have to pick one, I love "Number 2 Pencil."
Okay.
It's such a... I just love the construction of it and the whole... Just the expansiveness of it. I just like that song.
I should have consulted my mother-in-law before doing this, because she's a tremendous fan. You probably know her. She actually she went into labor with my wife while she was attending a show of the Radiators at the Dream Palace.
Whoa.
So she had to leave a show at the Dream Palace to go deliver
historic.
my wife.
That's pretty historic.
Yeah, for sure. So she's a fan, needless to say. And I know she's going to be like, how come you didn't ask him this? How come you didn't ask him that? Why didn't you tell me you were going to interview Reggie?
I have to say that probably was not the most spectacular thing that ever happened at the Dream Palace.
I don't think it was a big scene. I think it was like, I'm getting pains. I need to go to the hospital.
The guy that broke the window and stole a 5-gallon drum of hot lube was probably the most... the most amazing thing that ever happened.
When did it turn into where the fans knew where you guys were staying in the hotel? I always thought, being part of the crew, that was the most fascinating thing. And they were all on one floor.
Yeah, they were all rent out.
As you'd be on the elevator on the way to your room, you'd hear.
Oh yeah, security always knew right where to go, man. It was like we got kicked out of a couple of hotels, barred from a couple.
Well, to the credit of your band and your fans, and I know that Josh Abelson, who was your tour manager for many years, can attest to this, your fans tend to set records in bars for how much they're able to drink, as far as sales records. It's not the best. We've broken it, but it's always up there.
There's
at the
nights
top.
here, man. I remember at the end of the night, all it was water.
Yeah,
that's
just it. Now that the fans have gotten old enough, they don't drink quite as much. They still drink enough high-end liquor, but they're buying a lot of bottled water.
Oh yeah,
sure.
yeah.
There's we charge a lot for bottled water.
At the anniversary shows, you still see that one person pass out and got to be carried out.
Oh, every year, every night. It's amazing for your fans that come here that are like, oh man, we've been seeing the Radiators since 1984 and this and that, and it's like, hey, y'all need to slow down. You still have 2 more nights after tonight. It's the first night.
Yeah, no, it's like
don't eat all your acid on the first night. That's
it's
crazy.
like people who come to Jazz Festival for the first time, and after the first night, they're done.
Yeah, exactly. Say, hey, did you drink water today?
You got to pace yourself, man.
Exactly. People come to town, and more often than not, whenever I have to carry out someone who just drops out of nowhere, we have to carry them out, and oh my God, call an ambulance, whatever else. And they're like, the first thing that you end up asking is I'm not going to get mad. Tell me if you ate drugs. Like, we need to know this. That might depend on whether or not we should give you this or that, or tell the medical professionals, like, I don't know what happened. It was like, well, what happened? It's like, well, we got into town today, and we went to dinner, and then we came here. And it's like, okay, so you flew, and you went up high altitude. You probably had drinks at dinner. You came here and had drinks. You've been standing on your feet all day. It's like, did you drink any water today? And they're like,
what's that?
It's like, yeah, you need to drink water every day. Every day you need to drink water, especially when you come to New Orleans.
That's hysterical, man.
Yeah.
Hey, look, you see it every year.
Yeah, every year, all 3 nights, we carry some person that is generally about as old as my mother out of the building.
It's really bad, though, when it's your roadies.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys have had your share of...
We've had a couple that have been outstanding in that regard.
I know. I am actually great friends with no less than 4 or 5 people who have been roadies for you before.
Mouse's story is the best.
What's that?
Mouse about getting handcuffed by
that
the hooker.
That is the greatest rock and roll story. I'm so glad I'm in a band that has that story.
Go ahead and tell the story of Mouse. I think people...
No, Reggie needs to tell it.
Yeah. Do you remember all of it? I heard pieces of this.
Okay, correct me if I miss any of it. We were playing, it was in Atlantic City at the House of Blues.
Okay.
And we finished the gig. The loading dock is in the back of the building, you know, where the truck was. So Josh was at the bar, I think, and Eric was the other roadie, I think.
Yeah, it was Mouse and Eric, right?
Yeah. So he's sitting there with Eric drinking or something. Well, Eric's drinking, not Josh. And Mouse comes up and goes, "Hey man," he says, "Can I get an advance on my pay?" And Josh is like, "Yeah, sure. You know, what's up?"
It's always a good sign.
What's up? He's like, "I met these 2 babes." He's like, "Okay, well," so he gives him the money. And what happened after that? Apparently, they didn't go to the hotel room because they was, roadies. They split in the hotel. They ain't getting their whole own room. So he didn't want to go back to the room and have Eric maybe show up. So they went out to the truck because the truck has a sleeper cab in it.
Yeah.
So apparently they were in the sleeper cab and they, things are going along the way Mouse was thinking it was going along. And then they have this great idea like, "Hey, would you let us tie you up?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, let's get down."
That's a party, yeah.
So they're out of the truck now, and they tie him up to the front grill of the truck in his underwear, and then they rummage through his wallet, take all his money, and tell him goodnight and leave.
Atlantic City.
And then Eric went to the room, couldn't find him, goes out to the truck, and there's Mouse in the greatest rock and roll story ever.
These are both really big, tough guys, too, by the way.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know who Mouse is the toughest motherfucker I've ever met in my entire life.
He's awesome.
Aside from the voice already makes you scared of him. But he had two vertebrae removed when he broke his back. He used to be taller than me, and now he is about 2 inches shorter than me. He had 2 vertebrae removed from his back, and I have still seen him carry out no less than 2 guys at once, pick them up and walk them out to the front door.
I saw him later that day after I heard the story. I said, I was like, "Mouse, you got to tell me." He goes, "Yep, it's all true."
Rock and roll adventure of a lifetime.
I was like,
dude,
man,
Mouse is a rock and roll soldier.
I love that guy, man. He is. I wish he still lived here, man.
Yeah, it's probably best for him that he doesn't.
That's true, but I still miss him.
Yeah, no, I do love Mouse. He is definitely one of our most notable alumni.
Yeah.
From Tipitinas. Like I said, we're gonna ramp it down. We mentioned Po' Boys earlier, and how you're obviously a fan. There's something that you might not be aware of at Guy's Po' Boys right here on Magazine, a few blocks away. There is a po' boy called the Bomb. Have you had it?
I haven't had it.
Okay.
But I go in there, Marvin will make me up whatever.
Okay, cool. So you know Marvin. Marvin, longtime friend and fan of Galactic. They used to live across the street. He would feed them all the time back in the day.
That's how I heard the story, how they got the sandwich named after.
Okay, cool. What is the Reggie? I want you to create your signature po' boy that's going to live on a menu somewhere.
Man, I tell you what, I'm pretty simple.
Well, don't you just say fried shrimp or something like that. You're going to have to create one from scratch right now. The Reggie.
Man, well, it's going to have to include fried oysters.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. You can do that's a good place to start.
Fried oysters. I tell you what, I don't think you can improve on what's his name right over here on Magazine and Napoleon, Casamentos.
Oh, they have phenomenal oysters. Yeah.
That bread is killer.
Do you like their bread? All right.
Oh, look, bread is. If you don't have good bread, you're not going to have a good sandwich.
Obviously.
You know, man, that's a key thing. And that.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. Some people like the classic Leidenheimer style French
I do
bread.
too. I do too.
You know, something like that, or also just the Vietnamese style French bread is phenomenal as well. I don't know if you have.
That's a that's a new twist.
Yeah.
See, and that's what I love about the cultures mixing in like I think that's great. And I love all those kind of spin-offs on poor. I just like poor boy. So I mean.
All right. Well, let's say we're doing fried oysters and the bread from Casamentos. Any other accoutrement to go on there? Any other extras that would be really unique that you'd want on the Reggie?
No, man, because if the oysters are good, you don't need anything else.
I guess it's plain old fried oyster. We can't give that a name though because it already exists. It already exists. Is there? Do you have any? We'll let you give a free plug to your most frequented po' boy shop, I guess. Though.
Let's see. There's
you live
three.
Uptown, right? Somewhere uptown.
I live uptown.
What's your address? I'm kidding.
I'm on.
Okay.
That's as close as you get.
That's cool. I live somewhere on. So,
okay. Well, we're neighbors.
We're gonna beep that out so no one knows.
But guys, Parkway and Pontchartrain across the lake.
Oh, I don't go across the lake for anything, man.
I tell you what, Pontchartrain, they used to be in Chalmette before Katrina.
Okay.
They moved over there. That place kills.
Do you ever eat at Frankie's Joint on the North Shore ever?
Yeah, I used to eat there.
Yeah,
we used to go all the time over there. And anytime we would record in New Orleans, he'd always bring gallons of his crawfish corn chowder to the studio. Yeah, we'd spend all day eating.
I hear great things about it, but again, like I said, I never travel.
Oh no, it's a good restaurant. The problem is you got to get there before like 2 or 3 o'clock because it's just breakfast and lunch.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
But he's got some great dishes he's invented over there.
Well, I guess I should ask him.
Oysters McFrankie.
We should have had, we should have had him.
We should have had him cater.
Yeah.
You keep dropping the ball on that, Tank.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So anyone who would like to sponsor the All Right broadcast, please email info@tipatinas.com. We will happily give you free plugs for stuff. As long as you feed us, I guess. Actually, I do have some barbecue from Shaggy back there, so thanks, Shaggy.
Oh, yeah.
While we're finishing up, you've been super generous with your time, but you don't get to leave empty-handed. Everyone that is on the program gets a certificate suitable for framing. So congratulations. Go ahead and read that for me if you don't mind. And I have a folder so you don't lose it.
Certificate suitable for framing for participation in the All Right broadcast. We hereby certify that you, Reggie Scanlon, are officially awesome for being interviewed on this day, December 18th, 2020, for absolutely no monetary compensation whatsoever. Now I know I'm a professional musician.
Yeah.
Congratulations, and you're welcome.
You're welcome.
This can serve as my lost high school diploma.
Yeah, there you go.
Neglected to pick up.
It's aptly named. It is a certificate, and it's suitable for framing. And you might have noticed the sorry to do this. The seal of seriousness there.
Yeah, see, I never picked up my high school diploma, so this will serve.
Well, I'm sure no one's even asked if you graduated since you graduated anyways, right?
No, it's like
no, I'm in the Radiators. You don't need to know that. Right?
Well, it's kind of like when the first time I started working in studios when I was all freaked out because my reading is really bad.
Okay, you read that quite well.
No, like reading music.
Oh, okay.
And then nobody ever gave me anything to read. They just said, "Well, you're the bass player. Figure something out." It's like, okay.
Thank you so much to the great Pete Jones, the fully interactive program so far.
Right.
I know, right? Pete. That actually worked well. I think I think it was a medium success.
Yeah.
So
we'll have to wait and hear from Jay.
Yeah, whatever, Jay.
Biggest fan.
Yeah, our only fan. You can submit emails to info@tipatinas.com, and we will go ahead and read them on the air. And if we do read it on the air, I will send you a sticker if you give me your address. There you go. I think a stamp probably costs more than our stickers do. So maybe.
And we'll send a group around to your house, too.
Yeah, why not?
Why
not? Maybe we'll no, I was going to suggest something that I will not. But feel free to email us, and if you have a question, comment, anything else, I will read it on the air unless it makes me look like too much of a jerk. Again, thank you to the great Pete Jones back there doing the lights and sound. Thank you to Tanner Logan upstairs controlling the cameras, and thank you to Nick Logan, who is going to do all the editing, the executive producing, the creative, whatever title he wants to put on there, or just the general like fun police, as I like to call him.
And thanks to Tank for captaining the ship.
Yeah. No, I never thank myself. I actually have I
didn't
even
have to,
introduced myself on any one of these?
Never once.
That's why I did.
Once,
That's
yeah.
what I did.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I gave it away.
I think when we did Chris Lee, he might have tried to give me a shout out.
He did.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's not about me. Let's keep it about Reggie. Again, thank you so much to Tipatinas for allowing us to use the space. Thank you to Nugs.net for letting us use the equipment. I hope you enjoyed this on Tipatinas.tv. Please like, subscribe, share, do all the things. It's free. If we get enough subscriptions, we might actually get to monetize this thing.
There you go.
And then we can get another camera, put it on the Great Pete Jones, or maybe a microphone or a camera on Tanner in the closet upstairs.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Greenberg.
Well, there you go, saying my real name. You're going to have to go ahead and beep that out. Actually, Nick puts it in the credits anyways. So, yeah, I don't know why he does that. Anyways, thank you so much. Thank you to
y'all.
Reggie Scanlon. Thank you,
y'all.
Reggie.
Thanks for having me.
Cue the light change.
Ooh, man.
I told you,
Like
we
that.
stepped up the production this week for sure. Look at that. And it's even lit up on Fest pretty well.
Happy birthday in a couple hours.
Happy birthday in literally a couple hours.
That's
Yes.
right.
Reggie,
it.
thank you, man.
Oh,
Seriously.
man, thank you. This was fun.
That was fun. That went way longer than I thought I would keep you.
Oh,
If I told you how long it was, you might be a little disappointed.
hey, look, if you'd let me do it, we'd still be here, man.
Well, I know your fans have a long attention span. They hang out for 5 hours at your shows.